now then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of The Mediator with me, your host, Brian West, here to give you the top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Now, as usual, I give you the top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it first, followed by a movie clip, a skit, a trailer, or something that's going on in the community, or maybe some pictures. And then I'll give you the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it, folks. So let's waste no time. Ooh-wee! Let's get to it. Story number 1. Arson fires is a topic of discussion locally. Here is why. Since the year began, reports of arson fires continue to make headlines. Now, there have been so many arson cases that Guy Volgren of the Vindicator published a piece on May 15th, and it was a local article about how arson fires are becoming, they're being implemented by criminals to hide other crimes. Now, the headline highlights how arson fires is on the rise in Ohio. In 2022, 385 of 953 of the fires that the Bureau investigated were deemed arson fire cases. Now, that's 40% according to the report. So far in 2023, 147 of the 385 fires that have been reported were set intentionally, according to the report. Now, it's important to note that some people have died in a few of these arson fires, according to the reports. Now, that's why story number 1 made it this week, because where there is death and fire, there is danger. Big headline. Story number 2. Farmers has big plans for Canfield. Farmers National Bank. $9 million is the number for Farmers, the Farmers National Bank, to expand in Canfield. Construction will begin on Broad Street for a 22,000 square foot building. Now, the project will begin in July and take about 16 months to complete. Farmers has over 700 employees in the community. Farmers Bank has 65 locations in Ohio, thus making this a story to talk about. That's why I made it to the top 8 this week. Big headline. Story number 3. How is the local farming business? That's a good question. Senator Sherrod Brown, a Democrat, met with farmers after introducing the Local Farms and Foods Act of 2023. Now, according to the local report, the legislation is aimed at simplifying applications for local food programs, increase investments, and sustain impactful nutrition initiatives or incentives. Sorry about that. Now, the bill came to pass after the East Palestine derailment, which affected local farming somewhat and did catch the attention of legislators just in case it does happen again in the future. Now, residency and agriculture was also mentioned in the report as contributing factor in the bill. That's why story number 3 made it this week. Story number 4. The price tag to assist East Palestine is massive. East Palestine, if your country. Cleveland 19, the news channel, the website, whichever one you want to call it, they have confirmed that the total cost of the East Palestine cleanup has cost the company of Norfolk Southern about $387 million and counting. The cost and the continued health checkups on the village of East Palestine is what got the story in, because this stuff costs a lot of money and they're asking Norfolk Southern to pay for all of it. This is why this story keeps staying alive, because if it is priceless, that company could be moneyless soon. But they're hanging on. But I'm sure their finances are dwindling. That's why story number 4 made it this week. Well, let's hope they have a good insurance policy. Big headline. Story number 5. Local legislation delays in the headlines because of council members. With 2 council members absent, according to one Vindicator report published May 18th, the following ordinances were delayed. A 142 2000 contract with Arcadis USA Incorporated for engineering work on a proposed project to replace water lines to about 300 West Side homes. Now, according to the report, some contain lead. The other ordinances have to do with ARP funds to cover abandoned and blighted properties. That's why story number 5 made it this week, because people are looking for they're looking for these improvements, and ward heads are looking for these improvements, and they're looking for their money to implement in their districts and their wards. And that's why story number 5 is so big, because the more things are delayed, the more Congress may decide to take their American Rescue Plan money back. That's why story number 5 made it this week. Story number 6. How is the ARP spending going? Speaking of ARP money, $600,000 to improve 2 parks and $300,000 to assist with redevelopment of the east side of Federal Street. These are just a few of the ARP spending allocations. 11 months ago, Youngstown City Council approved $10.5 million in spending for parks and recreation, but hasn't spent much of the money. Now, this story is still developing, as continued emphasis seems to be geared towards ARP spending and how fast they can spend this money. That's why story number 6 almost made it to the top 2 this week. Big head. Story number 7 and the top 2 local headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Folks, I am not going to lie to you. I was very exhausted today coming in to do the show. But I still remain motivated to do this program. I'm not gonna lie to you, and that's the fuel of the fire. Like every week, I'm excited to know more about stories that can impact your life, and it can keep you informed. And it's amazing how the drive is still there. I've been doing this show for probably about 3 years off of the air, and I think 3 years on, 3 or 2 years on the air. Some of it was on the radio, but it is a very challenging, and it does take a lot of exercise to do the show, but I seem to still enjoy doing it. I'm not gonna lie to you. So let's get to the story number 7. Story number 7: local communities are looking to levies for help. They're looking for some tax dollars, local communities, to balance those budgets and to pay some bills. Polling Council has proposed a $168,000 annual price tag to help the police department make up for the loss of estate tax and drug seizure funds, according to a Mediator report published May 15th. Story number 7 is important because Poland is not the only community looking for a levy to help keep the jobs and pay the bills. That's why story number 7 made it this week. Almost made it to the top, because we are talking money and needed money, especially in these hard economic times. It almost made it to the top this week. Big hit. Story number 8, the top local headline and developing news story that made it this week. Folks, all my life I've been smacked around. I've had good days and bad days, but I feel useful doing this, giving my time. It actually feels good, as if I'm doing something righteous, righteous. Some people go to church to feel righteous. Some people go to work to feel righteous. Some people make music to feel righteous. I read stories for you, to keep you informed, to feel righteous. Ooh, yeah, that's a good thing, baby. Ooh. Story number 8. Big money in opioid settlement headed to Ohio. And opioids, talking about trying to feel righteous, there are a lot of people with drug problems, and that's bad locally. That's bad. The Valley will get $2.8 million from an opioid settlement. The money will be used to tackle local drug problems. There are a number of programs being enforced to help fight the local war on drugs. The money from the settlement will be used to assist in the fight. The question is how do you get people to kick a habit that is so hard and messes with the brain to make you addicted to it? There have been so many families affected by drug use and opioid problems. It has destroyed a lot of people's lives. That's why story number 8 made it to the top this week. Well, folks, those are our top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. I'll be right back with the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories. So don't you go anywhere. You're in the Mediator with me, Brian West. I'll be right back.
What does Method8Inc.com Media Center have that I need? small prints, event consulting, photography, business consulting, technical consulting, entertainment consulting, fundraising advice, event videography, movies, news, publishing, media, books, entertainment, acting, broadcasting, public relations, access to the visual and performing arts, ink and black ink refills, audio recording, graphic design, theater, minor computer and cell phone repair, and they're located at 5648 Market Street in Boardman, Ohio from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. every Monday through Friday. The list goes on and on.
Method8inc.com. Buy stuff, watch stuff, or read stuff.
Oh yeah! And yes, we are chipmunks.
Welcome back. And now it's time to get to the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week. Folks, I treated myself to a movie this week. I caught the new movie that just came out. And these new movies that they're coming out with, I mean, they are just looking real. I mean, they got things that if you'd have took Sidney Poitier from way back in the day and you'd have put him in some of these scripts, I don't know if he would have been able to keep up. I mean, actors like Judy Garland or something, put him in today's cast. I mean, they got movies where you got raccoons and combat zones and talking about real life things, animals with false arms, chatting in cages. I mean, this stuff looks real. No wonder some people losing their mind. I mean, you go into the theater, it will blow you away. I mean, now everybody, I guess they start to feel what they see in these movies. They make it so real that when you leave, you're just you're blown away. I mean, it's real. The excitement, the sound, the footage, the graphics, they don't miss nothing. I mean, nothing. It looks so real that even if it's dead, they can make it look alive. Animals talking and breathing and speaking English. I mean, this stuff is unreal. The imagination has gone too far. Now, I wonder if people got to take medicine before they go into a theater, then I don't know how what accolades more we can give these people. They have gone above and beyond the Call of Duty. I never in my lifetime as a child could imagine sitting next to a raccoon on TV telling me about his problems, crying, and going to the gates of heaven. Glad I got that off my chest. I even made a song about it. If it's real, it could be fake. If it's true love, it could be hate. Ooh, yeah. Well, folks, let's waste no time. Let's get to it. Story number 1. Speaking of real, how bad is marijuana, weed, the Buddha, the ganja, the cannabis? How bad is it, folks? A new study finds that marijuana may harm the development of babies in the first trimester of pregnancy. This story made it in after research led by Oregon Health and Science University revealed the adolescent cannabis abuse in the United States, how it has increased drastically by about 245% since 2000. The piece goes on to say that alcohol abuse amongst teens has steadily declined while marijuana use has gone up. People have gone to this drug to get thoughts. Some of these movies I see, I'm wondering, they got to be smoking some heavy stuff. I mean, screaming goats, talking raccoons. I mean, this stuff is getting real. It's real. It looks real. The legalization of marijuana has become a contributing factor to the steady decline in health and cognitive ability among heavy marijuana users. Some people refuse to acknowledge this, but this is what the studies are showing, folks, that Buddha, that weed could be opening up gateways that we never may be able to close. That's why story number 1 made it this week. Big head. Story number 2. I want anybody to think that I got anything against movies, but I actually enjoyed a lot of the movies that I've seen lately. But some of this stuff is amazing. How far the computer graphics has come. I mean, this stuff is real. So story number 2, the battle for votes is still on for both parties, folks. How can computers calculate these votes? A new census data is showing a shift in the voting trends. Data is showing a slight shift towards Republicans in some categories. The article published by CNN Politics goes on to spell out the most recent voting trends and data. The article is all about demographics and also mentions how Democrats are gaining ground with some voters in some categories depending on the age and ethnicities. Now, the article is packed with voter data, but with what got the story in is the current trend of what they continue to call polarization in America when it comes to politics. Some people, well, a lot of groups are pushing to weed out the uninformed vote, which is causing a lot of confusion and backbiting in this story. And that's why the story got in. That's why it's still developing. Story number 2, big head. Story number 3. Yes, there is still a need for doctors and nurses in America. New report shows a shortage in the American healthcare workforce, folks. The report highlights how there is just not enough doctors and nurses. America is also failing in the field of diversity, with historically black medical schools calling for more funding to train a more diverse workforce. Now, the numbers are staggering. America needs more than 17,000 primary care practitioners, 12,000 dental health practitioners, and 8,200 mental health practitioners, according to data from the Health Resources and Services Administration. That's why story number 3 made it this week. Story number 4. Big oil news, folks. On May 15th, CNN Business reported that the Biden administration planned to buy 3 million barrels of oil to begin replenishing the emergency oil stockpile. Now, according to the report, the current emergency stockpile has been depleted. This is yet another hit against Joe Biden, the current president, who decided to tap into the depleted stockpile, the current depleted stockpile. Now, when Biden took office, the SRP held about 638 million barrels of oil. Now it is down to 362 million barrels. That's the lowest level since October of 1983, folks. That's a long time. Biden made the decision to tap into the reserves to lower gas prices. This story is still developing. Well, folks, those are our top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week. I'll be right back with the top 4, so don't you go anywhere. You're the Mediator with me, Brian West. I'll be right back. If you want to check out the stories that almost made it in or did make it in, go to our Twitter feed on our website. Check out everything. All of the sources are there. And go to the website. It's method8inc.com. Method8inc.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor the program. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week, folks. Folks, we are in a critical time, and a lot of people are not really even kind of keeping their eye on this debt ceiling thing. But could you imagine what would happen if people didn't get their Social Security checks, or the military didn't get paid? People in the government facilities didn't get their paycheck, and this happened. Under in the time of the economic times that we're in. This is real scary, but this keeps popping up, and I've always thought, especially in America, that some people seem to be on autopilot. Some people just don't. It's very scary, because the people who go into the combat zones, they often have to suffer the most, and it always seems like the people who don't really even contribute much, it doesn't seem like they really are paying attention to how serious this is, And some people just think that those checks just come out of thin air. Now, they're talking serious business here. They're talking about cuts across the board. But the joke is that you could wake up and still be living. You could still go out and plant flowers. But the sad part about it is everything costs money. That's how sad. That's the saddest part about living in capitalism, is everything costs money. Everything. The show, my ties, my suits, my shoes, the air I breathe. Mainly, most of the time. I mean, my health. There is nothing free. So if they don't raise the debt ceiling, there's gonna be probably more pissed off people than there was before they didn't raise it, or if they do have to. That's why we better hope. Shoot, people be praying. They be praying hard. Now may be the time to start praying. I don't care what religion you are, because if you don't have no money, then it's a sad story in America. I mean, it's sad. I've often supported the poor and tried to support nonprofits, but without money, I'm just gonna be out on the street, be like everybody else. I'm gonna be out. The show's gonna stop. The bill collector's gonna call me up. They're gonna send threatening voice messages. Some of them might even be outside waiting on me to give them my life. You know, that's sad, folks. And that's where we're at. I even made a song about it. If you thought you had it rough before, wait till the money is no more. You will turn to a serious man, because the joke was all a plan to turn you into a madman. My CD is coming out, baby. It's coming out soon. It's going to be called Never Get a Grammy, Never Get an Emmy, and Never Get a Day Job Being a Singer, baby. Woo! Let's get to it. Story number 5. The exodus from Democrat-run cities is in the headlines. Speaking of exodus, speaking of broke, how does a Democratic Party convention descend into chaos? This is the case in a Fox News report out of Minnesota after an emergency meeting had to ban individuals engaged in violent assaults at an event to nominate candidates for a Minneapolis City Council seat. Now, another Fox News report explains how residents and business owners are fleeing Democrat cities in droves as homeless camps wreak havoc. The quote is absolute madness. That's what it states in the article. The article goes on to say how there seems to be a lack of government policy to help. It also blames Democrat policies for making it worse. The story is still developing. That's why story number 5 made it this week. Story number 6. Who is paying for the border problems? America's border problems. Folks, the migrant surge is even a problem for big cities like Chicago, and that is up north, far from the south, the southern border. This story alone shows the complicated system and network that migrants have within the United States. The more these stories evolve, the more that seems to come out about how sophisticated these networks probably are. And residents are getting upset in these safe haven cities, where a lot of migrants seem to be floating and migrating to. The budget for U.S. Customs and Border Protection and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, if you did not know, is about $25 billion. That's a lot of money. This number shot up to almost $800 million more over the 2023 enacted level that was before. And yes, folks, this is at the taxpayer expense. So the $800 million more over the 2023 enacted level. That's what they probably projected. So this is bad news for taxpayers, folks. And that's why story number 6 almost made it to the top 2 this week. Big head. Story number 7 and the top 2 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week, folks. For the land of the free and the home of the brave. Story number 7. What will it take to reach a deal to keep the Stars and the Stripes bills paid, folks? Ooh. Republicans want spending cuts, and currently the two parties, Republicans and Democrats, seem to agree on little to nothing, according to McCarthy, who's in the fight with his fellow colleagues in Congress. Now, some of the plans include revising the permitting process and rescinding unspent COVID-19 relief funds and potentially trimming the spending. That means that they want to take some of that COVID money that is unspent back. Whew. President Biden remains optimistic, but the time is ticking, folks, and you can be optimistic, you can be everything, but when that money runs out and there is no debt ceiling decision, and you got to pay the bills, you got to be optimistic that the bill payers will be optimistic with you, because there's a lot of pessimistic bill payers. That's why story number 7 also made it to the top this week. Big. Story number 8 at the top. International headline and developing news story that made this week. Hola, hola, 8. Hola, hola, 8. Ain't my type of hype. Oh. Story number 8. Yeah. Don't you feel it? The excitement of mediation. Flying in every week to try and save the day, folks. American taxpayers are seeing injustice, and the smell of blood is in the air, folks, because the debt ceiling issue ain't going nowhere, and the wolves could smell some blood too. The American taxpayer is finding a voice in the fight when it comes to the debt ceiling, with severe hardship holding steady among American families. If the government does not reach a deal, it could be even harder, much harder. Now, everyone paying into the system has a voice in this fight with a number of questions. Republicans introduced a plan that could entail about $4.5 trillion in cuts. The story is still developing, folks, because when you're talking money and debt and paying the bills, everybody in America's attention is now on whether they're going to raise that debt ceiling, because you are talking some serious paycheck money from the government. Big headlines, story number 8. Well, folks, those are our top 8 local and international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. I hope you got something out of today's program. I always get something out of doing the research. As usual, I'd like to thank all the news outlets, the journalists, the people on the front lines, the media. You deserve all the credit. I'm just a mediator navigating your stories for the greater good of the public. Well, folks, I am out here. I hope you got something out of today's program. If you want to show some support here at Method, it does not take much. All you have to visit the website on the screen, buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or to sponsor a program. Or you can just stop at the store, 5648 Market Street, see my smiling face, give me a hug, tell me how decent the weather is, whatever, and I'll be there. Well, folks, I'm out of here. I'll be back next week looking over 200 or more stories to keep you informed. Have a good week, everybody. Thank you for tuning to The Mediator with me, Brian West. Peace.
Then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.